In 30 days, I'm going to paint 3,000 points of Death Guard for the Horus Heresy, and I'm going to do it using the Army Painter. Hey there folks, so when I'm in front of a camera, something weird is happening, and this month is no different. This month is actually the culmination of years, more than a decade of experimentation and playing around, and it's finally come to a head. So I want to start with a little bit of a story. Now, a good 12 years ago now, while I was still living in New Zealand last time, it's a long story, but there I was back home living in New Zealand. I had all my hobby stuff out in front of me, and I wanted to paint an Ultramarine army for Warhammer 40,000 because I think Ultramarines are cool. Don't judge. I know you are. I can hear it. All the same, what I had in mind was to dip the army because I'd had some really interesting results using the quick shade dip on Imperial Guard, and I thought, well, maybe it'll work on Power Armor too. And it did, and I actually still have, this is an old photo, but it does demonstrate the results that I got out of that, and they were pretty cool. The idea was that I could put base coats on, dip the miniature, and then once it was varnished, I just went straight to highlighting, and there was no mess, no fuss. I like to try and remove the middle step of a lot of painting guides that you see where it's base coat, shade, layer, and then highlights. And I figure if you can skip that layering stage, you're saving normally about half the time painting a miniature, which is why I always suggest thin your washes. All the same, what happened is that as I was getting ready to paint that army, I moved internationally across the entire planet for the third time. And all of my hobby stuff ended up in storage, in a boat. So it took about 5 months for the very slow boat with all of my toys on it to arrive here in Germany where I am now. And as you can imagine, that put kind of a damper on the Ultramarine project. But skip forward a few years until just a couple of months ago, where I had been picking up, and I think you'll see it on the channel, the dip again, and playing around with it and experimenting and seeing what was possible with modern paints, recent releases, and the quick shade dip, which was actually the Army Painter's very first product, which I think is kind of cool. And I popped up this fella. Now, one or two things went a bit bonk while I was working on this fella because I was impatient and I didn't follow the instructions. All the same, the end result is pretty close to what I wanted, and I was happy enough with the finished product there. And when I popped that up on Instagram, it was Tyler from the Army Painter who actually popped a comment and said, "Oh, man, you're really making me want to dip a Marine army." And my brain went ding, and whoa, back a decade to that Ultramarine project. And I thought, Horus Heresy, I want a 30k army. I'm going to dip a Marine army. Now, because I had this in mind as a result of Tyler's suggestion, I actually got in touch with the Army Painter and I, hat in hand, said, hey, I've got this idea. I want to paint an army using the Army Painter stuff because it's what I would be using anyway. Would you guys be willing to help with that? And to my surprise, they went, yes. What do you need? And I said, Space Marine Army? And they went, we will help you with that. And so they did. Wow. So insanely generous from the Army Painter to be backing this series of videos as it is. It was really nice of them. And I have added, with what they've sent along, a couple of bits that I did have previously because I've bought starter boxes and what have you from previous releases. I'll talk a little bit about the army in a bit, but that's the premise. That is the idea here. 30 days to paint 3,000 points of Horus Heresy stuff. And it's not all going to be 3 huge tanks. There is going to be a Death Guard army, which means infantry heavy. I don't have a strict idea for list specifics and war gear and that sort of stuff. I've got an idea in my head of what has typically worked across 3 or 4 different game systems, and what I know about the Death Guard, it should work for them as well. So yeah, now I got to paint 3,000 points of Death Guard. It's So if you've been watching on Blue Sky, I haven't been subtle about this project coming up. I've been posting some build photos and what have you. Turns out, assembling Space Marines is a lot more tricky than it was when I first started in the hobby, and I have been building almost non-stop since just before the beginning of August. Now, I wanted to give a shout out on a personal note to the Army Painter here because the team might not have realized this when they greenlit this idea of mine, but I've had a weird couple of months, a rough couple of months, and we're talking about funerals, an operation that I am still recovering from. I'm okay, just a little uncomfortable, but these things, they get you down. And one of the things that I have been enjoying is to get back into my painting and get back into making videos and saying hi to folks. And I don't think that the team over at the Army Painter really realized what this was going to be for me personally. So as well as an opportunity to show off their stuff and what I do, it's just a really nice hobby project. So I do want to say to them, beyond the sort of business side of things, and thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. You know, it gives me something nice to do. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now, doesn't mean that it's going to be exclusively Death Guard throughout the month. I have got one or two other things planned, but it is going to be predominantly, here's how I've painted the infantry, here's how I'm doing plasma glow, here's how I'm doing weathering and what have you. I want to break the project up into little chunks because I think the fastest way to do this is going to be to have everything built, everything primed, and then everything ready to dip in one go. So it's going to be a challenge, let's say. One of the most interesting parts, I think, for a lot of folks is going to be seeing how I tackle the dreadnoughts and vehicles, because you can't take a Land Raider and cram it into a little container of dip. It doesn't work. If you've seen me recently, you know that you don't actually dip the miniature into the pot for most cases, but vehicles still do require a slightly softer touch, and we'll get to that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be probably 5 shorter videos, little videos where I just show you, hey, there's this specific method I want to show you today. Tomorrow is going to be the first of that, and it's going to be a complete paint of the Centurion from the Saturnian box set, because I figure if I show you how to paint a character start to finish, you will be able to figure out, well, if I take that step off or I do less of that, you'll be able to paint your basic infantry, no problem. So Death Guard are my choice for a couple of reasons. First, I love the character of them. I love the grim, unrelenting, not caring about losses. They're funky. They're stubborn as hell. They're kind of the bad guy equivalent to the Iron Hands, which you've probably seen a couple of times on the channel. I like those guys too. So they're the ones that I like. The bonus from a painting perspective is that they also don't like to go overboard on heraldry and little bits of foufara and trim and stuff like that. In the rulebook itself for the Horus Heresy, there's a photo. It's not a photo, it's a picture. The Horus Heresy hasn't actually happened yet. They haven't got any live photos of the event. But anyway, there is a picture of a Mark III Legionary, and he hasn't got his trim painted. So all those little bits of gold that an Ultramarine or somebody else would be having to paint, I don't. So this is going to be lightning fast. The idea here is that I want to use the quick shade dip, and I want to use the speed paint and the speed paint markers for a lot of the time-saving stuff that I'm going to do, because I kind of enjoy the dichotomy here of the oldest and the newest of the Army Painter's products. I just think there's a nice synchronicity there to play up. So talking about very quickly the army itself, it's going to be a block of 40 tactical Marines, 15 heavy weapon Marines, loads of las cannons and Volkite Calvers, I want to call them Calvins. 5 Volkite Calvin balls. I've got a Spartan, a Dreadnought, the Saturnian Dreadnought, 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts, a Predator, a handful of the Saturnian Terminators because They are actually pretty cool. They're a bear to assemble, though. I did not enjoy doing that. And the boss man in the Saturnine armor, because he is almost unkillable, and that suits the Death Guard that I want to do. I think I do need to add a Rhino or something in there somewhere to make up 3,000 points, but it's a lot of infantry, a couple of war machines. The idea is that it should be visually impressive when it's put on the table. I want to put the army painting back into the army painter, because their slogan, get more time for gaming, can I make that true? 3,000 points in a month. Is it doable? If I do manage it, I might pick up a little treaty or something, something nice, something cool to paint at the end. It's not going to be Mortarion because, wow, he's going to be a lot of fuss. I might do him later on, but we'll see. I want something nice at the end of the month to treat myself if I pull this off. There is a lot riding on this time. I have fluffed Army in a Month challenges before, and I'm very conscious of that. And this time, I've got the team at the Army Painter behind me who have been kind enough to back this whole thing, so there's kind of an impetus on getting it done this time. All the same, if there's anything specifically that you would like to see as I go along, because like I said, I've got some snippets that I want to show you. Any questions or anything, let me know, because this is going to dedicate most of my hobby time for the month to it. Like I said, there are going to be one or two other videos, footnotes, random bits and pieces throughout the course of the month. I do still want to do one or two actual how I paint things. But man, I want some me time. I want some hobby time. And I am going to paint an army. Hell yeah. So yeah, there we have it. That's the plan. I hope it works. If it doesn't work, I am going to embarrass myself in front of thousands of people and possibly the entire nation of Denmark, which that's a few thousand more. We will see what happens. Wish me luck, folks. I am looking forward to the challenge here. And yeah, let's get it done. Ooh, one last thought, one last reason for dipping an army like I'm going to do. When you open a case full of dipped miniatures on a warm day, and the whole hobby room just smells like a woodworking shop, it's wonderful. Nothing beats the smell of a dipped army. So that's another good reason why.